Hello, hello. I'm live. How are you guys? You can't say good morning because it's a couple of minutes too late for that. 3 to be exact. It's noon 03 on December 4th. I think it's Wednesday. So let me text one of my mods and see if she's available. So, how are you guys? Anybody here yet? How's my sound? Let's just go over the basics before I get into my free association presentation. Please hit your like button if you don't mind. And here we are on this side. Make sure you're still subscribed if you are subscribed. And share a video of mine if you would be so kind, and turn on your notification bell to ring. So, Annie Ruler, it's not even showing up that you're here. That's hilarious because it showed up that one person was here and then it disappeared and then you said hi. Nice to see you, my dear. Have you ran into Hannah yet? I think you said it would take her like a day to get there. Okay, so now we have one like and one person. Awesome. It's just you and me, baby. Let's get the good old notepad. Okay, I'm wearing the cute little passport earrings again. Can you see them? They're absolutely precious, adorable little tiny books with actual pages and everything. Just in case you need to leave the country. Looking for Hannah. She left November 11th, I'm hearing. She left from Mexico, or that's when she went into Mexico. I think that this case is a line of BS. I really do. So, because now her family has retained an attorney, which is probably wise. Her family is saying that they didn't know anything about her crossing the border until the announcement where the public was informed. I don't know, Annie. I'll tell you what I'm thinking. I could be way off base, but let me do my disclaimer first, in case I am. Everything I say is simply my opinion. Bought ticket from Greyhound. Her social media account has 2 friends. Oh, yeah, right. 2 whole friends. Even I have more than that, and I'm not on Facebook. Everything I say is simply my opinion for the sake of hoping to start a conversation and open up a discussion and learn something and be educational. All my videos are made for YouTube. It's an entertainment platform. I almost said flatform. Jackie Bushable is here. And yeah, is that all? I think that's all. It's an entertainment platform. So thanks for being here, you guys. And let's just get right into it. I wanted to speak more about the Hannah case. I also wanted to speak more about Hegseth, Pete Hegseth, who has been nominated to be the Secretary of Defense in Trump's cabinet, which is really frightening, but it looks like he might not go through with it, but it's not looking good as far as who he might get replaced with. Might be just as bad, if not worse, but different, like DeSantis, is he the governor of Florida? I don't think he has like the criminal charges against him that Hegseth has, but he is like the prototypical Handmaid's Tale creator. Like that's definitely what he wants. So if he's nominated, I'm sure he'd be a shoo-in. Although Hegseth is a shoo-in as far as MAGA is concerned, I believe. And then this other guy from Florida, Chad Chronister, he was going to be appointed to be the head of the DEA, and he pulled out of the race out of the running because he has a history of being pride friendly. And so he thought that he would get, hurt maybe. Blacklisted, abused, what have you. So let's dive right into Hannah's situation because that's been all over the internet. I watched a really good Nancy Grace last night that I will put a link to in the description. I almost wonder, I know I'm going to sound crazy with this. I almost wonder if Nancy Grace is not watching my channel because she and I are free associating in all the same ways, bringing up cases like Gabby Petito. I brought up Kylie Rodney. I don't know that she brought that one up. I don't want to be accurate in this. I hope that I'm way off base, but in yesterday's conversation with you guys, I was talking about that basketball Utah Jazz concierge, Linda Luchetti, and how she was hired by Sherry Papini in Northern California for spin doctoring, for being like a PR expert. And then she went into the Kylie Rodney case as a spin doctoring PR expert. I remember Kylie's mom saying, well, I don't know how to do social media. So my friend Linda showed up because she's an expert in that kind of thing. My little piece of paper just fell that is supposed to keep the layer down. So sorry for the distraction. Anyway, the basketball thing. Hannah, as you guys probably know, if you followed her case at all, she turned up at a LeBron James event at the Grove shopping mall directly from LAX when she first missed her flight. And I heard somebody somewhere on the interweb say, oh, no, not LeBron James and his association with P. Diddy. And I just kind of let that go in one ear and out the other because, that's just kind of like what everybody's saying about everybody right now. And, personally, I love LeBron James. I mean, he's from Ohio, he's from Akron. And I don't know. I love basketball, so I'm often a big fan of these basketball megastars. But, Magic Johnson, he came out with his 50,000 women that he'd gotten in the sack. And then he had Kobe Bryant and his shenanigans before the tragic helicopter crash. The young woman at the hotel in Colorado that accused him of assault. And I was saying it yesterday how basketball players are kind of like rock stars and they have a very high need for the attention of the ladies, right, Fred? How's it going? And I know from living in the Pacific Northwest, when I lived in Olympia, Washington, there were a lot of basketball players that hung out around Tacoma, and professional basketball players. And they really liked to hook up with the ladies at the bars, but especially the Hawaiian looking ladies. So I knew this because I played volleyball on a team with a bunch of women that were family members that were all into the basketball players. And the basketball players were all married and they were all married, but this was like a big thing. Okay. So don't judge me for saying it because this is just my personal experience from 35 years ago playing volleyball in Olympia, Washington. So in my personal experience with that, I learned that the professional basketball players have a thing for Native Hawaiian ladies. Okay. Hannah Kobayashi is half Native, I think. I think her mom is Caucasian and her father looks like he's full Native. And she looks very ethnic. She looks very exotic. And I don't want to think that she was like an escort, a back page Craigslist. But with the advent of the OnlyFans, something that a lot of people do for money, right? I mean, a lot of good looking women have their OnlyFans page and it brings in some extra cash. And I've heard that one good OnlyFans photo can be worth as much as $1 million. So I don't know, because I don't know anybody who's ever done an OnlyFans, and I swear to you, I never have. I mean, I'm not that type. I wouldn't fit the profile anyway. Nobody would look at my OnlyFans, would they? We don't even need to go there. Um, I think Mark Molina went there once in one of his. He was talking about having an OnlyFans. Anyway, on with the show. I wonder if this ex-boyfriend, who is so shifty, it seems, I wonder if he was her handler and if she was being taken to New York City for some things. I mean, I've learned more, like she was being taken there for a photo shoot of a music thing or something like that. I can't remember. She was being taken there for a photo shoot where she was hired as the photographer. You guys have probably already heard that piece of information. And there's a lot of great photographs of her on the Facebook, and Nancy Grace pulled a lot of them out. True Crime Rocket Science pulled a lot of them out. You know, I take screenshots when I see great photos in videos. That's how I get most of my images for my thumbnails. Lots of great photos, not as like seductive as the Idaho 4 photos, or man, if you ever looked at Trinity Backus's mother and her auntie, fake Auntie Ashley's back pages, or sorry, OnlyFans. I looked those up way back in the Trinity Backus case. I looked up the OnlyFans because that was the first time I'd ever heard of it. And Ashley and Andrea Stanio had OnlyFans pages, and they were like, I felt dirty just looking at them. I mean, seriously, they were raunchy, very, very raunchy, not X-rated, but close. And then, we learned a lot, or I learned a lot more during the Idaho 4 case, as that seemed like a thing with the sororities. And that's what Google told me when I looked it up. Google was like, oh yeah, sororities and OnlyFans pages, they're like peanut butter and jelly. They really go together. And I was like, I didn't want to know that. But anyway, back to this case. So could she have an OnlyFans page? And I would imagine that a lot of those OnlyFans pages have back pages where you can basically get a date, right? Get an escort, get a companion to go to a party or go out to dinner or whatnot, right? And maybe the guy she was traveling with, the ex-boyfriend, like I said, was her handler, and maybe she didn't want to go to New York. Maybe that was something that was going to happen in New York, and she was like, hell no. And then maybe she was like, oh, I need some money. Maybe I'll check out this LeBron James thing and see if there's any takers there. Again, I could be way off base. I'm not wanting to blame anybody for anything. We don't know that she's been victimized. And just to let you know that I do consider the selling of oneself, I don't consider that a victimless crime the way a lot of people do. Even if it's legal, I still think it's not right. I think it's tragic and hurtful and dangerous. And again, this is all my imagination. Maybe that's the world that Hannah lived in, and that's why they've never said anything about what her whole family does for jobs or work or professionally, business enterprises. And maybe that's why her dad, felt terrible and couldn't take it anymore and took himself out, deleted himself. Or maybe he didn't delete himself and there's more to it, and that's just a cover story. I don't know. The whole thing is so shifty to me. Annie Ruler says, Jazz, you've probably watched ladies around your hubby in uniform, badge bunnies. Yep, that's what they call them. They do not respect marriage either. Yeah, I know. I know. And these women that I played on the volleyball team with, they were like total like church ladies. And, they acted like they were very conservative, but they liked to get loaded, tanked at the bars and score with the professional basketball players. That was their thing. That was like a, what do they call it? A notch in their belt. I thought it was gross. I was just like, you got to be kidding me. It was really a cultural thing with them. So let's just keep it real specific to that group, the microcosm that I had my firsthand experience with. Unless they were lying to me, which I don't think they were. I mean, I think they were bragging and they thought it was funny. And, anyway. Granny Annie's feet pictures have brought in $0. Oh, on your OnlyFans? That's too funny. Oh, Fred and Annie. Hannah update her passport, not necessary for travel to New York City. Good point, Annie Ruler. Thank you for that. So she had her passport with her, and the police say she used her passport to get into Mexico. So, yeah, that shows a premeditation of fleeing the country, unless maybe she just wanted to go see the Niagara Falls when she was in New York, right? I mean, you got to leave the door open because we can't jump to conclusions we don't know. But it's good to question these things. Like, why did she have her passport with her? I mean, I've got mine with me on my ears just in case. Gotta go. Okay. First impression of Hannah was she's running from boyfriend and family. Jackie Bushaball, that's a really interesting first impression. My first impression was that the family was into some illicit business, and I didn't know that she was traveling with an ex-boyfriend. So as soon as I found out she was traveling with an ex-boyfriend, I'm like, why the H wasn't that put out as public information to begin with? Because that's huge. That's absolutely huge. And my first thought was that maybe he was stalking her. It took me a while to come to this idea. I think it was just in the last couple of days that maybe he was her handler and he was getting her delivered to New York. He got to New York, but he lost his goods on the way. I hate to say that. I hope I'm way off base. That would make sense. Annie, my battalion chief hubby says yes. Women are looking for a notch. Yeah, the badge bunny thing is terrible. And then especially when you have situations like the law enforcement that like to take advantage of that, like in the Mickey Stein's case with his deputy. There's a lot of law enforcement that are delighted to take advantage of that, of course, whether they're married or single. And if they're single and it's not on duty, then, I guess you could call that consensual. But when they're doing it on duty, that's our taxpayers paying them to get their jollies off. Like, give me an effing break. We saw a lot of that in Pullman. We saw a lot of that in Wazoo, the Washington State University Police Department, as well as the Pullman Police Department. A lot of that. I don't know that we saw any of that in the Moscow Police Department, but I certainly do believe from watching all those body cams of Moscow police going to 1122 King Road with imaginary noise complaints, sometimes real noise complaints, and then asking for Morgan specifically when what's his name was asking for Madison, but he couldn't even remember her name. Brett Payne, when Brett Payne was harassing Xana and saying, well, is Morgan here? I want to talk to Morgan. I know Morgan. And poor Xana's so effed up. She's like, I don't have a Morgan. And then she's like, oh, Madison. You mean Maddie Mogan? Yeah. Okay. That's my roommate. Okay. No, she's not here right now. But no, I think that the law enforcement in that town probably spoke about those girls when they weren't getting calls, and then they were probably fighting over who got to take the noise complaint call, right? they probably called in fake complaints for each other when they were not on duty or on duty. They're like, well, I'll call in a fake noise complaint when you're on duty if you'll call in a fake noise complaint when I'm on duty, right? I mean, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'm surprised we never heard anything about that with the Moscow police department. But then you got to remember that they are in the super conservative town that's pretty much run by that guy, Doug Wilson, the guy who started the fundamentalist church group, the guy who likes to burn everything down in his videos. And I think that it's his crew that was accused of having a video camera set up behind the residents of 1122 King Road when the quadruple slaughter happened. Remember early on, we heard that they had a tripod out there in the middle of the street and that they were allegedly filming some kind of movie for some kind of college course credit thing. Like that all went away. There was a lot of talk about cameras in vents and such at the 1122 King Road residence, and all that went away. A lot of the information that I think could be crucial and key goes away, and we kind of forget about it. You know, like the Gatorade bottles in the Gabby Petito case. And it was the day that Dog the Bounty Hunter showed up to Moab to try to get to the bottom of what happened to the girls. It was like the very next day that law enforcement came out with this big press conference announcement like, oh yeah, that case, we solved that a long time ago. We just hadn't gotten around to telling you. And yeah, it was this guy who just happens to not be alive anymore, who just happens to barely have any connection whatsoever. And remember, everyone said, no, no, no. Brian Laundrie wouldn't have had a pew pew. He wouldn't have had a weapon like that. That's not his thing. And then later, what, 2 months later, they tried to say, yeah, he had a pew pew, and that's how he ended it. That's how he took himself out in the park. And those dogs couldn't find him, the cadaver dogs, because of all the water. And it's just like, no, cadaver dogs can smell under frozen water. And it wasn't frozen. It was freaking Florida in the summer. So yeah, they were like, oh, but it was so much water. It's like a swamp. It's like cadaver dogs can smell great with water, lots of water, even frozen water, like up to like 20 feet deep of frozen over water, in my knowledge and experience and opinion. We'll just go with that. Where are we? She updated her passport. That's interesting. My son is a lieutenant at his fire department and has no issues finding dates. LOL. Right. No, men are very cute in uniform, like Officer and a Gentleman. Richard Gere, you know, classic, right? I mean, women are very drawn to men in uniform. And I'll say my husband looks super cute in his uniform. I just told him that in the last 24 or 48 hours when he was getting ready to go to work. I said, oh, you look so cute in your uniform. So I guess you could call me a badge bunny, but we were married for a long time before he ever fell into that mess of a profession. I'm just kidding. I'm proud of him doing his job and I think being really good at it and liking it. But it is a mess of a profession in some ways. Oh man, the stories I could tell you. Maybe I'll tell you one, just so I'm not baiting you guys. But let me stay caught up. They said it was bucket list to see her aunt in New York. I'm not buying it. I thought that was a really weird term, bucket list. I mean, she's 31 years old. Bucket list is more like when you're 70. It's like, what is it that I wanted to do my whole life that I haven't gotten around to yet? I thought that was bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. Oh, well, maybe she knew she was at the end of the road. I don't know. I seen a short video this morning of Brett P at Grub Truck before the tragedy. That same night, Jackie Bushabel, are you effing kidding me? I mean, wouldn't surprise me at all. Not at all. That guy Joe at the grub truck, the big guy, the really, really big guy who made some videos in his car, just like up close of his face. I thought he was really trustworthy at first, but he seems shady AF, just like Einan. I thought Einan was trustworthy at first too. I get duped just as easily as anybody else. But in that Idaho 4 case, it kind of seems like everybody was in on it, doesn't it? Like it was a thing. And then the night of that big football game and all the UC Davis players being in town and partying. I wonder where they were partying. I wonder where they were staying. If they had hospitality on campus or off campus. Brett P needs more than a uniform. Well, he needs some lifts in his shoes. I told you I did so much research on him and his brother, and they were no taller than 5'6" or 5'7" at the tallest. And Brett's, I think, an inch taller than his brother, although I could be crossing my wires because him and Kyle, they look almost exactly alike. Almost exactly alike. And I'm pretty sure it was Brett who was a state championship finalist for wrestling when he was in high school, which I think he was in featherweight. I think his weight was like 115 or something, you guys. Like, I mean, he was like this big, and he wasn't that much bigger when we saw him in the body cam footage around the Idaho 4 case. He wouldn't have gotten much taller, maybe filled out a little bit, but he was still a really small person, like a Keebler elf, no offense. But when guys have that little man syndrome, it can be very dangerous, especially if they have a badge and a gun and a license to ill. And what else did I want to say about that? The lifts in his shoes, the chip on his shoulder. Like he was really into harassing Xana that night. Really seemed to be enjoying it too much when he was shining the flashlight directly in her eyes. And she was at home. She was underage. She was 20, but still she was drinking at home and he was harassing her. And I think it's legal to drink at home underage. I could be incorrect about that. I mean, maybe you need to have a guardian's company or consent. I don't know. Because I don't believe in that. I don't think that that's right. And I'm sure it's different from state to state. I think in Ohio, it's legal for underage people to consume alcohol in their residence if a parent's home, maybe. But I'm just like, hell no, not at my house. It's not legal at my house. I started as a nurse's aide in 77, married doctors chasing me around. I made rules not to date doctors, etc. Yeah, Annie, the doctors can be the worst. And yeah, doctors' wives have a very high rate of self-deletion. Very high rate. And that's one of the reasons. I think the other reason is just because they are often lonely. They don't see their husbands very much, whether their husbands are cheaters or not. And how would you know? You might think that you have the most trustworthy husband in the world. Like me, I think I have a very trustworthy husband, but still when he's late coming home from work, I'm like, why are you late? Why are you late? And yeah, I mean, you always got to stay on your toes, right? I mean, I'm sure he does the same with me. I mean, we have each other's locations on our electronic data, but still, you could leave your phone at work and then go run off to your thing, to your concubine, right? No, not same night. Jackie Bushable laughing. Grub Truck Joe no longer works for the University of Idaho, now marketing rugs, pills included. I'm not going to say that word. That's a hilarious phrase. Oh, ED pills. We'll just say ED pills. Yeah, crazy. Well, and just getting into that whole thing with steroids and roid rage and the alleged fight that was happening with Ethan and maybe Loesch at the frat house at Sigma Chi right before the whole 5 hours that was missing, right? That Xana and Ethan were had a 5 hour gap in their timeline from that evening, and then Bethany 6 weeks in, it wasn't until the affidavit that she's like, "Oh yeah, they were at that party that I was at," because it was like they were at the party until about 9 o'clock, and then they were lost for 5 hours, and then they were at their house what at like 2 in the morning. But then the dad was like, no, I was texting with her and she told me that they were watching a movie, sitting on the couch eating pizza. Just too many things that don't jibe. And then, her sister was going to school in Pullman, and her mother had been arrested in Pullman right prior to this or right after this with a ton of fentanyl allegedly. My goodness, all this stuff, you guys, it's so nuts. And then Ann Taylor was her representation. Ann Taylor was Maddie Mogan's father and mother-in-law's representation when they were busted for rugs. I don't think they were busted for rugs with the intent to distribute, but possession. But I think that Xana's mom was definitely busted for the intent to distribute. And then the whole thing with Emma and Demetrius and their distributing factors. And just that house and the empty room and all the allegations of both the steroids and the other substances. It's nuts, isn't it? It's absolutely nuts. And then steroids cause roid rage and shrunken junk. And that's what the fight allegedly was between Ethan and Loach, was the shrunken junk. Little man, wolf slayer. Yeah, right. And the bigger the truck, the smaller the manhood, right? And doesn't Dylan's boyfriend Quinn, didn't he have a giant black truck that people said was there that night? And then he's like, oh no, I live 5 hours away, I've never been to the town where my hot girlfriend lives. It's like, yeah, right, give me an effing break. When she doesn't have a car and you do, sure. And he's like, well, my car's a piece of junk, it could never make it that far. It's like, okay, good one. But obviously, if you had a girlfriend that hot and you had wheels, you'd be there whether you were broken down and having to hitchhike the rest of the way or not. You'd get there one way or another. Xana sold for opposing cars that tell or don't tell enterprises, in my opinion. Well, and then you got to remember Kaylee's super expensive car, right? I mean, her family said she had $7,000 saved that she put down for the purchase of that used Range Rover. Was that 2 days before the unaliving, or was that 2 weeks before the unaliving? I think it was just a couple of days. And then she was taking it. Sorry, I hit the mic with my ring. That might have been loud. She was taking it to show it to Maddie. Right? I mean, that was why she went back. That, and that Dylan was had invited her to be her plus one to the sorority party. And we can't forget the whole thing with the sororities, with Maddie and Kaylee having quit, having stepped back from their sororities. You're not allowed to do that, as far as I know. Like, that's not a thing. Like, that's like quitting a CULT. You can't quit. You can check out, but you can never leave, right? SG knows Kara Ben M very well. Okay, so Steve G, who goes by Gonzo from those who know him. I don't know him, but I think that's a cute name, Gonzo, like the Muppet. And because of his last name. So Kara, is it Northington or something like that? That's Xana's mother, for anybody who doesn't know. She's a different last name than Kara. And then Ben M is Maddie Mogan's biological father. And then he was remarried. Wait, am I getting confused? Right. No, I'm on track. He was remarried, and him and his new wife, current at the time, were both in trouble with the law. And they both had Ann Taylor as their representation because she was like the court appointed representation. And it seemed like such a conflict of interest when she became Koberger's representation, right? I mean, seems like she's done pretty well for him, but I don't know. I don't trust that case. How did we get talking about this case? Is it my fault? Did I do it? There was a video from Bubbly, a frat in Los Angeles, opted to quit during initiation. He was then stalked, his car repaired, home rearranged, CYKG maybe left. Oh, and he was assigned a private driver. Annie Ruler. When was this? See, Bubbly Waters does some serious deep diving. She's kind of like Shan in that respect. Like, they go down these paths and they find things that nobody else has found that I know of. And it's a lot to keep up with. I mean, honestly, I get overwhelmed by Bubbly Waters' mass amounts of information, but she's great. She's really, really sharp. The party I wish I never went to. Oh, that's what it's called. Thank you, Annie. The party I wish I never went to. I'll try to put a link to that in the description. So yeah, the stalking, the car getting repaired, the home getting rearranged. Just those cars, like all of their cars. Kaylee's car, Ethan's car. I think Xana had a car. I think Ethan's brother's car was there because he came in the morning. Everybody who had a car parked at that residence, those cars, they were not allowed access to them. They were being held as evidence right there in the freaking public, right there in the residential area, until finally, like 2.5 or 3 weeks later, they got taken into evidence. Except that they didn't get taken into evidence. They got taken down the street to the president's house and parked in his driveway instead of their driveway. That's crazy. And then you got to remember that his father and his grandfather both worked at the university. I think it was the grandfather that was the athletic director. One of them was the athletic director. So there might have been a lot of scandal for a long time with college sports and roids. That's how they win, right? I believe it was last February, but search title. Yeah. Bubbly is on fire and she's holding back. Well, yeah, I'm sure she doesn't want to overwhelm everybody because, yeah, her brain just explodes. Like, it just goes in like 12 directions at once. And she can track it, but it's hard for the rest of us. AT as to know all of this. Hey, Valentina, what's going on? And then the private driver has about 4 names, 5 cars, 6 stories, sus to us. Well, yeah, I mean, the whole thing with the private driver from the grub truck to the house and how they ditched Jackass and then how he did that and chased after them when he realized that he'd been ditched. There was that one part right before they ditched him where Kaylee was looking like she was taking a selfie, but she was also looking like she was trying to snap a photo of him in the background on the DL, right? That's always stuck out to me. There's so much in that case that's so weird. So much that's so weird. So the thing with Dylan and her boyfriend and his giant black SUV, and then the 4 or 5 cowboys that arrived to 1122 King Road in the middle of the night a couple of weeks after the tragedy, and what they all piled out of the vehicle into the residence for about 5 minutes. Am I right about that? And then they, they rolled up, they jumped out, they went in, and then they left. And I've always been very grateful for News Nation capturing that on their video footage. Hold on, I'm going to sneeze. At least I think I have to sneeze. That's never happened to me on camera, has it? It's been a long time if it has. Let me just try to drink some water and see if that'll chase it away. Valentina says, do any of you guys watch Once Upon a Crime Time? He actually proved there is about 8 runners zoomed in. I couldn't believe it, coming right from 1122 running to Sigma Chi. Okay. I appreciate your comment very much, Valentina. And without being specific, I just want to say that I believe that there's a lot of YouTube channels that were developed specifically, not just to cover this case, but specifically to control the narrative of this case. So I remember one specific, I'm not going to say which one it is, but they started their channel, I think it was November 9th, and then all they covered was this case. And a while back, I mentioned it, and then they quit covering anything. And they have covered a little bit since then, but I don't think they've covered anything but this case. And then there was another one whose second video, I think, was the still shot of the back of the corner club with the man without a face and Jack D and Maddie, Adam, Jackass, and Kaylee. And the day that photo was released, there was a small handful of channels that had it, and this brand new channel was one of them. I think that was their second video, and then they had such in-depth information. I was convinced that channel was actually Brett Payne, and there were a lot of trolls in my chat back then that I was convinced could have been somebody like Brett Payne. We got to be less specific, right? Anyway, there's a lot in the Idaho 4 that I don't trust. A lot. Like, my good friend Shan from Squirrels on Fire has always said that she thought the whole case is a psyops. And I have to agree with her of the distinct possibility of that, with any of these cases, especially that one, especially Kylie Rodney. I kind of get that feel from the Hannah Kobayashi case too. Like, why give us all this information about a missing person when there's so many people that go missing every day that you don't have that much information about? So why give us all this like half-baked information and then say, oh no, that wasn't even true. Here's the other half of the half-baked untrue information. Like, I mean, everything is an experiment in life. Seriously. Everything's a test, right? So yeah, I hope I answered your question, Valentina, without being too direct. Also, it is so sus. It's so sus. The cops arrive with black latex gloves already on. Ask your husband if he drives around with black latex gloves on in a cop car that you can't even make an arrest because no cage. It is so sus. Let's see. I don't think he drives around with the gloves on his hands, maybe during COVID, and it was 2022. So it wasn't really during COVID that happened, but post-COVID things were different. Right. And then what was the other thing I was going to say about that? When they had the plastic boot covers on, when they were like walking around outside the house in the leaves, but they didn't have the plastic boot covers on when they were walking inside the house when it was like a fresh crime scene. Crazy, crazy mofos. You think we don't notice this stuff? We notice all of it, right? Referencing the Banfield cops. Also, yes, I agree. Many content creators have stolen your ideas and not given you credit, but I do call it out. Oh, you're so sweet. Yeah, I was the first one to make the parallel between Meredith Kircher in Italy, what people know as the Amanda Knox case, and the Idaho 4. A lot of parallels. And at first I thought that it was quite a reach when I was making those parallels, but I did a few videos about that over time. And yeah, there was another channel in particular that like 4 months after me pretended that she dreamt that up. And I was just like, would it really hurt so much to say, oh, I got this idea from this other channel and there. Of course, I don't want to accuse anybody of anything. It's entirely possible that they dreamt it up on their own. But, I know that that channel in particular has a bad habit of doing that to all the content creators. And, it's a free for all. It's the internet. It's public information. So it's not illegal. It's just uncool, and it's just in poor taste. And to me, it just makes you look bad as a content creator if you can't just say, even like, I forgot or I failed to mention, like a year later. It's fine. It's fine. We all make mistakes. I know I get all of my ideas from other content creators. I'm just kidding. I get a ton of my ideas from other content creators. And then I actually have ideas of my own, which are why I like to make content, because I'm like, sorry, my dogs are barking. Because it's exciting when I'm like, oh my goodness, I just thought of this. I wonder if anybody else has. And sometimes it happens more than other times, but I watch a lot of content, a lot of channels. I get a lot of material from a lot of different places. I try to give them all shout outs. It's impossible to catch all of them, but I definitely do like to give credit where credit is due. And not to get on this soapbox and file lodge a complaint about it, but my channel has struggled from the beginning. It grew really fast and then it like flatlined, and it would just be nice if it wasn't flatlining anymore. But I don't like to accuse any shadow banning of that. I like to take the responsibility on my own self for putting all this yoga in my channel and dumbing it down, right? No, I'm just doing what I want to do, and I'm not doing it for the likes. I'm not doing it for the subs. I'm not doing it for the money. All that stuff is great, and it keeps your channel alive. So it is important, but it's way more important to me to just follow the beat of my own drum. Hey, Coco. Coco. See, I'm always telling them not to bark when they bark. And so they're like, oh, we can just bark as much as we want. Come here, babies. Do you want to be on the TV? Come here, Coco. Up, 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 up. Come here, baby. Come on. Come on. She's so cute. She likes to sometimes just sit right behind my chair. See if you can see her. I don't want to roll because I might squish a toe or something. You can see her little brown nose. She's a brown noser, right? Sorry. I had to say it. It came out. Okay. So let's talk about some of these other things that I have notes for. Is the Los Angeles Police Department trying to call off Hannah's search? Because it seemed like a mixed message. It seemed like they were saying nobody needs to look for her because she's missing on her own accord and she's allowed to do that. But we're still asking anybody to contact us if they have any sightings of her. And we're still asking her to call her family because her family is worried about her. Like, that's just weird. I mean, if she wants to go off and do her own thing and be off grid, she's got every right to do that. But it seems like she is at risk. I mean, a woman traveling alone, even in the States, is at risk, in my opinion. And she's an extremely beautiful woman, an extremely exotic looking woman, and people love the exotic. They really do. It's like a whole nother level of beautiful when people are unusual looking, right? Um, I think she's 5'9". She's very tall, slender. I think she's 5'9". Maybe I'm incorrect. Maybe she's like 5'6", and it was Anita Pallenberg is 5'9". I know I just saw that today, so that was sticking in my mind. Anyway, Hannah has a great physique, very, very pretty face, pretty hair, looks like a really interesting person. So I think anybody on the street that sees her, whether she's doing her nerd thing in her glasses or doing her like fashion thing with all her cute outfits on the beach and such, she looks great in anything. So I would think that a lot of people would be drawn to somebody like her. And then if she's, they've alluded to mental health issues, they've alluded to substance abuse. I don't know. I don't know. I've certainly been suspicious of substances involved in the orbit around Hannah's case, not so much specifically with her consumption. But, I got to wonder why she's hanging out on Skid Row. Like, unless you're trying to score or you're trying to look for a free place to sleep. But why would she do that? That's just not safe. That's just not safe. Like, her case just doesn't make sense. And the police don't make sense. And that's where I think it's so parallel to Kylie Rodney's case. Anna Bees, hello, hello, all the lurkers. A woman traveling alone anywhere is a target for bad people. Absolutely. I mean, sadly, a woman in her own home, asleep in her own bed, is like statistically the most dangerous place for a woman to be. And that would be both from intruders and from significant others, right? Domestic violence. What is your opinion with the cop showing up to Banfield with black gloves on? See, I never noticed the black gloves, Valentina. That's great that you did. See, there's so much information, it's easy to miss stuff. The same one looking like the one Chris McDonough found 11 days after the crime. Since when do cops cruise around? Remember, I'm so glad you said that. You just reminded me. Mark Furman, I thought, was the one who found the first black glove. And then Chris McDonough found the second black glove. Mark Furman showed up to 1122 King Road early on, and then he just disappeared off the face of the earth. And I was so glad that he did, because I was like, no, please don't ruin this case too. And I have some respect for him because he did crack the case with Martha Moxley and Michael Skakel. That case had been cold for 20 or 30 years, and he did some really good work on that case when he was down in the dumps over the whole racist crap with O.J. Simpson. So I've read Mark Furman's book, and, I have mixed feelings about him. I'm definitely appreciative of what he did with Martha Moxley's case, and he did really good work on that case. But I also don't really trust him. And the whole thing with the black gloves in the O.J. Simpson case, I did trust those black gloves, honestly. But when Mark Furman showed up with a black glove at this case, I was like, no, you've got to be kidding. And then he totally disappeared, never to be heard from again. That's just weird. That's where you got to wonder the whole thing with that psyops, like I was just talking about. And it's like they can't even make arrest in that type of cop car because there's no cage in the back. Yeah, so the cops being on that Banfield, when that footage, Paula Plunder got that footage like right away within the first couple of days after this happened. And I was like, dang, this is going to be awesome, because they're right there in front of the residence at 3 a.m. 3:01, I think, is when it starts. And there could be something on that body cam that is relevant. And then it seems to me like just pre-planned, like their body cams are like pointed at the residence. It's like they're there again, psyops. And then you have the 4 people running by and everyone being like, oh, that's right when it happened. And then you had the whole pushing back the entire time frame for an entire hour, that nothing happened until after that DoorDash got delivered at exactly approximately around 4 a.m. No, they know exactly when the DoorDash was freaking delivered. That is sus AF. It's unbelievable. Okay. My female cousin Bambi Larson was laid by MS-13 in a sanctuary city at 4:30 in the morning. I'm so sorry. Should I Google Bambi Larson? Slayed. Okay. I'm glad because I was like, I'm glad that you put that in there because I was trying to figure out what you said. I'm sorry that that happened. So when was this? I'm going to Google Bambi Larson. So this was in California, February 28th, 2019. Gory details emerge in the red rum of San Jose mother. So this was with a sharp-edged object in her home, or is this something different? Okay, so the murder suspect is in the U.S. illegally with a lengthy criminal record. Transient arrested. That is so sad. I am so sorry. Okay. 24 years old. She was 59. That's awful. I'm so sorry, Annie Ruler. Hit by new wife. Now I'm all confused. Female cousin Bambi Larson was slain in a sanctuary city at 4. So maybe it's a different Bambi Larson. Let me see. Hit by new wife. In my opinion, I trusted Black Glove because house guest heard it. So let's see if I do Bambi Larson and MS-13. Is it the same case? See, for some reason, I thought you were saying that your cousin was law enforcement, but I just imagined that, right? So, yeah, it is the same case, isn't it? No, I'm referring to law enforcement involvement in the case, like right around the time they showed up to Banfield. The cops have black gloves on. It's hard to explain via text. Okay. Psyops is right. Also, there's so much occult symbolism and numerology in this case as well. Oh man, the numerology is off the chain, seriously. And then, honestly, I'm not that familiar with the occult symbolism stuff, but it seemed like there was a lot of that in Kathy Rodney's case. Has anybody noticed anything like that, dare I ask, in the Hannah Kobayashi case? I sure hope not. Annie Ruler, do you have a channel yet, woman? If not, you definitely should start one, Lady Jane. So she's got her channel. Granny Annie is traveling again, and maybe a second channel too. But I don't think she covers the true crime on the Granny Annie traveling again. Her ex is a nice guy, millionaire, jealous new wife. That is her. Ugh. That's so sad. It's just unbelievable that people take people's lives, isn't it? I mean, I look at it like they have this logic as if that's going to solve whatever problem it is that they have at hand, that they're not going to do it unless they think it's beneficial. And then they're just creating a whole lot more problem, which is why I think it's safe to call these things out, because if they're thinking of rubbing somebody out for calling it out, they're taking another huge risk, because then that's going to be high profile again. And if all the people calling out the crimes happen to have their cars blow up or what have you, it's pretty obvious. So, in some sense, I think it keeps us safer to call this stuff out, because if they're doing this and nobody's calling it out, nobody is safe. Nobody. Yes, Granny Annie is easy. I have brain disability. Research is not easy. Thanks, though. Valentina says, also, I don't trust the Chapins at all. I know. I hate to say that, but what's really profound, and I think it was Bubbly Waters who did the slow motion thing, was when Stacy Chapin was doing a presser in front. I thought it was in front of the police department, but I think it's actually on campus, just in front of uh, you know, an academic building. And Dylan and Bethany walk by, and all these players in the case walk by, and some of the law enforcement, they're like trying to hide Bethany and Dylan from the camera, but they're being so rude to walk by in the background during this presser. Like, they could have gone around, they could have waited. Let me read your whole thing. Also, I don't trust the Chapins at all. Stacy went from Crime Con to interviewing on the Squeeze same weekend, and they don't do true crime. They interview Hollywood celebrities like WTF. That is wild. Yeah, so they lived in Mount Vernon, Washington, which is right near where I was living before I moved back to Ohio. I lived in Marysville. And my husband worked up in La Conner, which is right next to Mount Vernon. It's tulip country up there. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. And then when the triplets went to the University of Idaho, they moved to, I forget the name of the area. It's like Priestess Lake or something like that. And then I want to say that they bought some land to make their own tulip farm. Princess Lake, something like that. Anyway, the parents may be graduates. No, they're not. Those parents are not graduates of the University of Idaho, I don't think. Everybody else's parents were, maybe. We know Kaylee's parents were. We know Jack's parents were. Xana's parents, maybe not. And Maddie's parents, maybe not. I'm not sure. Dylan's parents, I'm pretty sure. And then Bethany's parents, not. But anyway, back to Ethan. So his triplets, his triplet sister and triplet brother, all three of them were at the University of Idaho. And when this happened, you got to remember, with the whole arrest of Koberger, that they arrested him right before the beginning of the new semester, and they had to have an arrest in order for people to come back onto campus. Remember, the other fishy AF thing was when people left, law enforcement was encouraging people to leave campus early for Thanksgiving, right after the quadruple slaughter. That was so weird, because, yeah, you're going to want to help people feel safe, but you're also going to want to interview everybody before they leave. And you're not going to be trying to encourage people to leave early. That was just weird. That was so weird. That was suspicious right away. And then, because they arrested somebody, then everybody thought it was safe to come back to campus. And then, especially for the siblings of one of the victims, I would be scared to death. I would not be able to do it no matter what. I really couldn't. These families are just sus AF. But it's funny because like Maddie's family isn't really sus, and um, Xana's mother and father aren't really sus, even though, half of those family members have involvement, criminal backgrounds. But then the ones that have like the glowing backgrounds and are financially well off, yeah, I agree. Um, the GS the G's, the Gonzalez family. I know I'm not saying the name right. That's why I call them the G's too. Begging for money. That's an insane amount of money they are asking for to go to the trial. I've lived out of Airbnbs fleeing DV. It's about $2,500 a month, and that's in a decent, nice home. So I didn't know that they're begging for money. That is wild because like Steve G is like an IT expert for I want to say for Kootenai County Hospital, whatever the hospital is where they live. Latah, no, it's Kootenai. Latah is where the crimes happen, but Kootenai, I think, is where Steve G works. And then, he also had that whole like hex thing on his hat with like kind of a Bitcoin kind of thing. And I started to talk about it the other day, but I didn't really get into it with Kaylee's job offer from uh, Extreme Networks. Was that the name of it? The company that she had the offer for the job in Austin, Texas, that paid so well, which is why she was uh, moving there. And I don't know, after she spent the $7,000 on the down payment of the Road Ranger, how would she then have a whole bunch of money left over to go travel Europe for a month? And was she planning on traveling Europe by herself, or did she have a friend or family member going with her? I don't know. But, she moved back in with her parents. She moved out of the house. And then her plan, I think, was to bum around Europe for the month of December. And then she wasn't planning on starting the job in Austin, I don't think, until February. But that Extreme Networks, I think, is the name of the company that did all kinds of IT and especially security, which always seems so ironic, right? In this case, it looks like I got some water or something on my light. Anyway, and then Steve G had a similar industry with his profession. So it always struck me as very curious, very, very curious. It's just weird to be begging for money. Yeah, I mean, the Chapins and the Gonsalves, I think is how you say it, the Gonsalves. It's easier to say it when you see it printed out. They have raised almost 75K. Oh, both families are trying to get cash to go to the trial. Tons of GoFundMe donations. That's kind of creepy to me. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Their GoFundMe is up to what? 75,000 for Boise? Annie Ruler says, Annie, I know it's well at 50K last time I checked, and to me, they sold out. At first, they wanted justice and truth, and now they're ready to hang BK, and yet evidence shows complete opposite to that. The G's have the GoFundMe. Wow. Yeah, that is wild. In any of these cases, I think that people can get paid off to be silent and accept whatever as the official cover story. I just can't help but say that because I think that's true. That is just for G's increased because the public was getting upset, in my opinion. Wow. Yeah, I thought that the G's were like so financially sound, and especially the Chapins, extremely financially sound to have the whole family up and move to Idaho and to like buy all this property and to pay tuition for triplets to go to school. I mean, paying tuition for one kid to go to school. But then the surviving kids of the Chapin family did get some extra scholarship money from Sigma Chi. And I always thought that was weird. Like that was like what, a consolation prize or something? It just doesn't sit right for me. Um so yeah, the whole thing with Hannah, going back to Hannah Kobayashi and the ex-boyfriend, that doesn't sit right. And then in Idaho 4, you've got Jack D, ex-boyfriend. In Kylie Rodney's case, you got ex-boyfriend. In Madeline Soto's case, you got ex-boyfriend. Like, ex-boyfriends are not a good ingredient in a case, if you ask me. Maybe an essential ingredient, but not a good ingredient. Like, never going to point to something good. Christy G puts a bad taste in my mouth because of how she treated Samantha G, Steve's firstborn. She made him disown Kaylee, oldest sister, Steve's firstborn. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, Valentina, and I agree. It's like he could have been a little bit more present in his daughter's life and still been 100% with his wife and kids, in my opinion. Yeah, that was weird. Christy also invalidated how badly Kaylee was done with Jack D. Oh, I know, Valentina. That's always upset me a lot. The way she was like, oh, they weren't really broken up. They were still going to get married and have kids. It's like, maybe and maybe not. Like, let your daughter figure that out. That's not up to you to define. Totally weird. And I just thought of something random. Remember Jack D and his balancing the like desk and the big shelves, like huge heavy things on his chin. Do you guys remember that? The tennis racket, the axe, the couch, and then the giant like industrial restaurant shelves balancing on his chin. Jeez, that was so effing weird. And sure, it could just be some stupid human tricks that he happened to be really good at, but it also shows an extreme athletic prowess that could easily be translated into all kinds of other illicit activities involving sharp edged objects, in my humble conspiracy theory opinion, allegedly. Okay. Yeah, I remember that. Valentina Dallas says, okay, so yeah, I really want to know, back to Hannah Kaba, uh, now I'm messing up her name. Hannah K. I can say it sometimes and then half the time I can't. Kayasaki, something like that. Hannah's case, I still want to know what type of industry or profession her and her family worked in. Um, it to me seems like a missing piece of crucial information that's probably missing intentionally, because if they're involved in illicit stuff, nobody wants to say anything about that. Anna B says Jack D was always sus. In my book, 1,000%. You know, as a parent, and if something, God forbid, were to happen like that in my family, and a significant other came over to my house and said, well, let me take off my shirt and prove to you that I don't have any scratches, I don't think I would allow them to take their shirt off. If I trusted them, I'd be like, please don't take your shirt off. I mean, that's just insulting. And if I didn't trust them, I don't think I'd let them in my house. I mean, that's always seemed like such a weird thing to me. The fact that he didn't have any scratches on his torso doesn't mean anything to me. It really, I mean, all it means is that nobody scratched him on his torso. That doesn't mean that he didn't have any involvement. To me, the visual that he had from his apartment into that residence is creepy all by itself. The long-term relationship and the fact that Kaylee had him blocked mostly on her social media, because we've all seen the disgusting comments that he would make on her photographs, and why she didn't delete that, I don't know, but she would just block him. And then somebody was saying in my chat a few days ago that she had her sister Olivia blocked too. I'd never heard that. I don't know if that's true or not. And I haven't had a chance to research that. Let's see. And he didn't even return Kaylee's call in the AM. Exactly, Valentina. I know, it's like getting back to basics. It's like you can't skip over that stuff. But when it goes unanswered for so long, we just skip over it and forget about it. It's also sus. Or call the family. And Christy says on the interview, Maddie or Jack would have called me. Well, Maddie was gone. You didn't call Jack D call. Yeah, I think I follow what you're saying. Christy says in the interview that Maddie or Jack D would have called me. Well, Maddie was gone. Why didn't Jack D call me? Just because he had no scratches doesn't mean anything, like at all. Exactly. I mean, yeah, he could have been there and just not had scratches, especially if there were multiple people involved, which it sounds like there was. Then and yeah, a blitz attack, you're not always gonna have defense wounds with a blitz attack with multiple perps. He was obsessed. He is involved, in my opinion, in one way or another. I do believe that fully in my heart. Well, and the breaking up is the most dangerous part of a relationship that could be volatile, that could have domestic violence in it. And just judging from his rude comments on Kaylee's photographs, not a lot of respect for women, not a lot of decency, and not a lot of common sense. I mean, just a gross embarrassment to himself, degrading to men too, in my opinion. So speaking of which, let's talk about Pete Hegseth some more. So it looks like Hegseth might be about ready to duck out of the running for the position of the Secretary of Defense for the new administrative cabinet, and that Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, might be the next in line. I mean, personally, I do hope that Hegseth gets pushed out, because he's been accused of so many crimes, and it seems like he's guilty of them. And to me, it's just disgusting. And I think that Ron DeSantis is disgusting too, but I don't think that he has a history of those types of crimes that I know of. So I guess, like, of what I would call the two evils, maybe Ron DeSantis would be the lesser of the two evils, but I don't know. I mean, it's hard to pick your poison, right, when you don't want poison. I know a lot of people felt that way about the election, the presidential election, and we're just like, screw it, I'm not voting for anybody because I can't. And, and then I mentioned at the beginning, this guy, Chad, I think it's Chronister, that backed out of the running. He was appointed briefly to be the head of the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, and he's a county sheriff down in Florida. And because he's been very pride friendly, I think he got cold feet and was just afraid of getting torn up by the MAGA side. MAGA seems to love Hegseth. They don't think there's anything wrong with him because he's tall and handsome, and who cares if he's a misogynist, because what's wrong with that anyway, right? To quote that Spinal Tap, when they're like, What do you mean we're sexist? Do you mean sexy? What's wrong with being sexy? So, anyway, see what else you guys are saying. The ski mask, yeah. He was wearing long sleeves gloves and a ski mask. Who? Jack D was always sus. When was he wearing long sleeves gloves and a ski mask? Are you talking about like a selfie that he took of himself that night? I remember a bunch of people were taking selfies that night at 3 a.m. of themselves in black ski masks. I think Dylan was one. I think that Jack D was one. One of them, the ceiling matched Einan Harsh's ceiling in the apartments next door. I remember noticing that and being like, holy crap. And then what else was that reminding me of? The gloves, the ski mask, the uh, the payments, the Venmo types of payments that were happening with the little memos attached that said things that were sus, like for 3:30 a.m. Right? Wasn't there like a Venmo payment? There were a bunch of Venmo payments to the like one of the people in a leadership position in one of the sororities, right? And then it said things like 3:30 a.m. in the memo when the payment wasn't made at 3:30 a.m. And maybe is that why they changed that nothing could have possibly happened until after exactly right around 4 a.m. because that's when the DoorDash happened and that's what we know. So yeah, we had the driver of the DoorDash and we had the driver of the ride home from the grub truck, and I don't know. Remember when JLR went to Moscow right away and he went right into the Jack in the Box and started asking them about their grub truck delivery or I'm sorry, Grubhub delivery, DoorDash delivery, and what their hours were. And that was, I think, my first introduction to JLR. And I was like, this guy is kind of cool that he just does that. Like, pretty wild. He's very brave. He does stuff like that on a lot of cases. And I like him. I have a lot of respect for him. I don't know how he does what he does. He's just like on top of everything 24/7. Him and Magnolia. It's got to be exhausting, but I appreciate what they do. Let's see. Where was I? Oh God, I didn't know that. Anna B's The Intruder. Oh, I'm not sure if you're talking about when I was saying that women aren't safe in their own homes and their own beds is where they're the least safe, which is why you should always sleep with an axe or a baseball bat under your bed, if not a pew pew, right? I have to get to a doctor's appointment. God bless you, Jez. Keep speaking truth. Thank you, Valentina, and bless you and happy holidays. Merry Christmas. If I don't see you again, oh, I probably will. It's like a whole 3 weeks away, right? Which I think was Jack D. No photos, just going by what Dylan said. He was dressed like, I don't believe anything Dylan said anyway. Frozen shock phase. That was so annoying. I tried to believe that at first. I'm like, yeah, frozen shock phase. That's entirely plausible. But then as time passed, that story fell apart. That story totally fell apart. 8 hours of frozen shock phase that wasn't frozen shock phase. It was just frozen shock phase from calling 911, but it wasn't frozen shock phase from going into Bethany's room or calling their friends or whatever. It was just frozen shock from the aversion of calling actual authorities. But no, you don't call the authorities. When something happens and you're in a sorority, you are obligated by their own little sorority laws to call the head master of the Greek system before you call family, before you call law enforcement. Remember, that was a whole thing too. That's huge. Absolutely huge. Okay. So we're like almost an hour and a half. So maybe we'll wind it down. I do got other stuff I got to get to today. It's so nice to see you guys. Thank you so much for being here with me. And yeah, that whole thing with the National Basketball Association with the NBA and LeBron James and Hannah and the Utah Jazz connection that just happened to be a thing with you know, Kylie Rodney. I kept wanting to say Gabby Petito, but no, Kylie Rodney and the Linda Luschetti, the concierge for the Utah Jazz, volunteering her time so generously and graciously to help with PR. You know who hired a PR agency instead of legal representation right off the bat, other than those people? Is Amanda Knox. Amanda Knox's family spent over $1 million on like the greatest PR agency in all of Seattle. And look how well that served her. She's an absolute bag of scum, in my humble opinion. Absolute bag of scum. But when you hire a PR expert before legal representation, like that would be like Hannah's family hiring a PR person instead of legal representation. But then it's making me think, just to do my free association thing, is SF Investigates, is he kind of like that? Is he kind of a PR expert? I mean, I don't think he's an expert in anything except maybe an expert in sleaze. Sorry, not sorry. Okay. Kylie Rodney and Linda Luschetti, too weird. I know. And then the whole thing with Sherry Papini, because that was huge. That Sherry Papini case was huge. The court case had just wrapped up in June or July, right before the August where Kylie went missing. And in a not too far of a geographical proximity, Sherry Papini's case was due west of the Sierra Nevadas, like all the way to the coast almost. I forget which town she was from. Mount Shasta. I think she was from Mount Shasta. And then, so when that case finally was resolved, very little time passed before the same PR person popped up for Kylie Rodney's case. So right away you're like, wait, she was just working on a fake kidnapping case. Is this a fake kidnapping case? Right? LOL Jazz. Okay, I'm going to wrap it. Love you lots, friends, and take care of yourself. Have a really good day. Make sure you get your nutrients and hydration. Make sure that you are just being good to yourself and being good to the people around you. Make sure that the people around you are good to you. And if they're not, just tell them to take a hike, right? Easier said than done. But no, it's important to have healthy boundaries and not take crap from no one. No one. I mean, we don't, we've got a zero tolerance for trolls on the internet, but we should have a zero tolerance for trolls in real life too. And anybody can become a troll in your life, right? Anybody. So just don't allow it. All right, I'm going to hit the end stream. Love and light. Have a great day. Thanks again for watching, and hit that like button on the way out if you haven't yet. Thanks so much to everybody here and everyone on Replay Crew. See you soon.